fly in the sky. I can go twice as high. Take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow.
Fuck that shit! These nuts in your mouth, bitch!
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Terror Table for episode 112. We are a horror podcast. We talk about horror movies, horror books, horror music, if that counts. Anything horror adjacent we discuss on this show. Normally we only talk about movies and TV and all that kind of stuff, but we have started a new series, which we are calling Book Club, and this episode will be chapter 2 of said book club. I'm one of your regular hosts named Mitch, and alongside me as always,
Buzi.
And we have two other hosts of this segment of the Terror Table, and I'd like to introduce them with my sister first.
Hi, my name's Tara.
And my girlfriend.
Courtney.
Okay, and
Hi. Weird, yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna be talking about books today. The point of these book club episodes are to share spoiler-free reviews, so you guys are able to seek out the books that sound most interesting to you. I'm sure there will be a day will come where we will all be covering the same book, and we can have like a full deep dive in it and give you guys enough time to read it yourself and join the conversation. But for the time being, we are just each choosing a different book and sharing our thoughts and review and spoiler-free discussion on all of these books, so you can find stuff to add to your read list. If we mention something that interests you and you don't happen to have a pen on you, whether you're driving or listening at work, or you're at one of your nieces or nephews' baptisms, we will post the titles discussed in the show notes and on our Instagram and Facebook page, which can be both found at the Terror Table. So today, we're gonna we'll start off with each of us will tell you which book we will be reviewing at the end of the episode, and then before that we're just gonna talk openly and freely about other books that we've taken in over the last month, and we'll just go from there. So I will be reviewing The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker, as well as Black Hole by Charles Burns. I chose two books because one is a graphic novel and one is very short. I also have a bunch of other books I'm going to be talking about today, but Courtney, what will you be reading?
I read A Serial Killer's Daughter, My Story of Hope, Love, and Overcoming by Kerri Rawson, the daughter of the BTK killer.
Hell yeah. Buzi, what did you read?
I read Thor by Wayne Smith, which was adapted to the big screen in the movie Bad Moon.
That was a brain fart if I've ever seen one. Tara, what are you reviewing?
I read Cannabalism, A Perfectly Natural History by Bill Schutte. And
no, you only got one.
Okay, I thought, these are sort of related though.
Okay, yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, that was gonna, and then the book I read to complement it was My Friend Dahmer by Durf Backdurf.
Yes, so we will be talking about those at the end, near the end of the show, probably around the 45-minute mark or somewhere around there. Before that, we're going to be just talking about the other books that we've read. But before we get on with all that, I just want to give a shout out. If you are an avid reader and you enjoy listening to podcasts that discuss horror literature, I can't urge you enough to check out our friends at Erie International, who frequently do deep dive episodes on horror novels. And they've even had a handful of great interviews with horror authors like John Langan. You can just go through their feed and you'll, if you're an avid reader or something like that, or you can even message them on Facebook or Instagram or anything and find out which of their episodes are based on books, because in my opinion those have been some of their I like all their episodes, but those are their really strong ones. So check those out, and I'll take this time to also announce what next month's book club is going to look like. So next month we will be doing Lana month. That's where our frequent listener and friend Lana, she has a blog at silenceoflana.wordpress.com.
Probably calm.
I think that's what it is. I always read it off her Twitter. But yeah, you can follow her on Instagram and you'll see her on our page. I think she's Lana Banana on. Anyways, she's a huge reader. She's a bookworm. And we've gotten a lot of our recommendations from Lana, so we decided to dedicate an entire month, or like an entire episode, to picks from Lana. So Lana has chosen a book for each of us to talk about next month. So we'll give you a heads up on those right now so that you can read them or choose which ones you want to read. And those are the ones we'll be talking about next month. I will be reading The Devil All the Time by Donald Ray Pollock. Courtney, what did Lana choose for you?
Verity by Colleen Hoover.
Cool. And Buzi,
I was gonna say I don't know.
well, you do know, but it's a book that I'm going to be reviewing today. She chose. Do you want to? I'm giving Buzi the book right now.
The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay.
Yes.
And Lana chose The Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin for me.
Cool.
What an awful last name.
Schweblin?
I'm sorry.
Schneebly.
It could be worse.
Schneebly.
It could be worse.
All right, so with all that out of the way, we can open up the floor and just start talking about what we have been reading. Who would like to go first? Any takers?
I'll go first. Mine's small this month. I didn't have a lot of extra time to read, unfortunately. So I finally finished that trilogy by Stephen King that I've been reading forever. I don't actually know what the trilogy is called.
Mr. Mercedes.
Mr. Mercedes trilogy, yeah. So I finished End of Watch. I know I like this series a lot more than most people out there. I was actually so thrilled when I started reading the first one. I was like, oh my goodness, this is actually a crime series by Stephen King. There's no sci-fi, there's no weird shit, but as per usual, it ends up taking a very weird sci-fi turn.
I was like, ooh, I'm going to want to write this down.
There's aliens.
Well, let's not spoil anything
No.
for people.
I'm guessing these are like
There's
Stephen
actually-
King things.
I can say that because I have decided that I don't want to read the trilogy because I've heard enough things from other people to know that it's just not my thing. So Courtney's like, can I just tell you what happens? And she tells me, and I'm like, Courtney, that's fucking terrible. Like this sounds awful. And I'm like, this sounds like him at his absolute worst. And then you're like, you're right, it is kind of dumb.
It is. It's weird and it's stupid, but I like the main character so much. Like the main guy,
Can
the
you give
detective.
what are the books called in series, and what was the first one? Because that one sounds really interesting.
So the first one is called Mr. Mercedes.
Okay, and what's that one about?
So like the very first chapter is a group of people at a job fair because they're going through this really bad like recession. Basically everyone's broke and there's thousands of people in line for a job fair, and this guy decides to steal a car and just drive through the crowd and kill as many people as he can, and the police never caught him, and then he starts taunting a retired detective, and it's basically him trying to find this guy on his own, not with the help of the police. So like the retired detective himself is really likable, like, well, sort of, but and it just goes from there. And then the second one is Finders Keepers.
But sorry to cut you off here, but that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it is.
That first one.
The
sounds
first one's
awesome.
awesome, and there's the series,
And it
on
sounds realistic.
It sounds like a David Fincher movie.
Yeah, it
and-
sounds like Zodiac.
And
Yeah.
Like-
there's like parts where he's taunting him sort of on like a online webpage that's not
Okay, so
traceable
here
to
we
other
go.
people. No, it's fine. You're fine.
So he's like shit talking on MySpace.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly what it is. And then basically this guy decides that he wants to do something even bigger and crazier and kill as many people as possible. And it's basically about the detective, his young friend who mows his lawn, and someone else, and they're trying to figure out what this guy has planned next and stop
How
him
did he
before it
wrangle the
happens.
dude who mows his lawn into this?
Because he's good with computers, and he needed
Oh,
his
he's
help.
the tech guy.
He's the tech
like
guy.
Heat.
just rocking his New Balances.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and like they're also likable. It's enjoyable.
Okay.
So it's basically them trying to stop this guy. And then the second one is called Finders Keepers. So the detective decided to start his own like investigative firm, basically like a private eye.
Are these in like chronological or like? Okay, so he like did this and now he's doing this.
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't want to ruin anything because if I say any more about the second one, you'll know what happens
yeah,
in
that's
the
what I'm
first one.
curious about, okay.
And then the third one is End of Watch, which I'm sure you can gather from the name what eventually happens. But yeah, It gets a little bit sci-fi near the end, but it's
you
still
still liked it.
enjoyable. I liked them. I'm not afraid to say that I liked them.
You should never apologize.
Well, no, because
Yeah.
How's everyone in Maine?
everyone in Maine is doing great.
It takes place
Actually,
in Maine,
I
obviously.
don't even think this is in Maine,
Oh,
to be honest.
because that's like another Stephen King thing. He has to talk about where everyone's
And so
from.
that I'm perfectly fine with. I like that those elements of Stephen King's
Painting
books.
the backdrop.
Yeah, well,
They're
and
always
just
the
having,
same backdrop.
Well, that's the thing, is that they
But
all
that's his thing.
all of his things have, like, this has been common knowledge since
Yeah.
the 80s, that his stuff takes place in the same universe, most of them.
Yeah.
And like that's what's cool about it. Like I even like in the new Pet Semetary movie, they reference Cujo, and
Yeah.
I'm like, that's awesome. I like that. I like the shared universe idea. Castle Rock is a cool idea. But it's when he takes a like grounded crime thriller and somehow turns it into something like with computer brains and stuff like that. Like I'm not saying that's what happens, but like it's like
Kind of
it's-
is.
yeah.
John Grisham does a very similar
Yeah.
thing, not with the sci-fi, but he like everything he writes is set in like the deep
Politics
south.
and shit.
Well,
Doesn't-
no, everything's set in like Atlanta, Georgia, and
Mm-hmm.
like he paints this very like warm southern.
Southern Gothic.
Yeah,
people call
exactly.
it.
So like that's similar. Like anytime you read a John Grisham novel, you know where these characters
Yeah.
are coming from.
Yeah, and I like that. I like being able to, jump. You're hopping into a King world, or you're
Yeah,
hopping into a Grisham
yeah,
world.
I
or-
appreciate that.
Yeah, I like that kind of stuff. So, Courtney, though, you would recommend that to people who are kind of
I would. I really liked them, and I think other people out there would like them too.
okay.
Other than that, I read.
I really want to read this one.
Yeah, I read The Hiding Place by C.J. Tudor. So this is her second book. Her very first one was The Chalk Man, which I know I've talked about before.
Yeah, Lana was going to recommend that one to what I think you honestly, you would probably like Chalkman just as much as Kevin. But yeah, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, so that was one that Lana had also suggested Mitch to buy for me as a present.
Yeah.
Was it for Christmas or my birthday?
I think it was your birthday.
I think it was my birthday last year, and I read it super quick. I was obsessed with it immediately. I really liked the way she writes. So then when I found out that her second book was out, I had to rush out and get it immediately. So this one has a very, very, very big Pet Semetary feel to it. I've never actually read Pet Semetary, but I've seen the movie, obviously, and I was like, oh, whoa, this is getting to a Pet Semetary place, and I wasn't sure how I felt about that at first. So I was like, oh my god, like, is this
Like a straight up ripoff.
straight up ripoff? And then I think of all of the things that I've read and watched, which are all the same type of thing. It's not a ripoff. It's just almost like a subgenre of things that
Yeah.
people like to get into, and I'm cool with that. And it was super enjoyable. I loved it. I read it pretty fast. I also love the way that her books are, because all the pages
I was
are
gonna
like,
say that's a beautiful looking
yeah,
book.
it's gorgeous, and it's the exact same as the first one, the same size, just a different color. So
Nice.
Chalkman's orange, this one's blue, same size, same page.
I love that.
Feel. So I'm really into that, and I already can't wait for the third book that she writes. So the tagline for this one is, "The worst day of his life wasn't when his sister went missing. It was the day she came back."
Which is so corny.
Love it.
But like,
Yeah.
like The Chalk Man by C.J. Tudor is a book that Lana recommended to me to get for you. And I think, do you guys have any of those books that you haven't read that you've gotten multiple people to read? Because like I've recommended The Chalk Man to like 5 people. Who
I don't think I've ever
all of them have
recommended a
read
book
it
that I
except for me.
haven't read.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever
I don't
done that
think
for like
that's
a
ever
movie
happened.
I
either.
think it's because I started it and I intend on finishing it because it was fucking awesome. It's The Chalk Man is more like along the lines of like it kind of starts off with, and it's not like a clown thing or anything,
Yeah.
but like it's that kids being crazy thing.
Right.
But I've got my friend Mike to read it, and he was trying to talk to me about the ending. I'm like, yeah, haven't
I haven't
read
read it yet. Oh
And
my
he's just
God.
like, you fucking asshole. He's like, what? This could have turned out to be shit. I was like, well, Courtney loved it and Lana loved it, so it's enough for me to recommend it to someone.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so you liked The Hiding Place. You gave 5 out of 5 on Goodreads,
I
didn't
think
you?
I did give it 5 out of 5 on Goodreads.
You just hand those things out.
No, I don't.
What would you have given End of Watch?
End of Watch, I think I gave a 3.
Okay.
Right on.
Is that everything you read, Courtney?
Yeah, I started reading Bird Box, but I'll talk about that next month because I'll have actually finished it because I needed to start my April book, which is actually a little bit bigger than I had planned. So it's like, oh, I better get this started because it's
Yeah.
mid-April.
On like a daily basis, how much like time do you think you put into reading?
Right now, I only have my lunch break at work.
Okay.
So just under an hour to read, which normally I would come home, in a perfect world, I'd be able to come home and read for a bit, but usually I have cooking to do, or I've been busy doing other things the past couple weeks, so I just haven't had any extra time.
Emptying Mitch's blood bags.
Emptying Mitch's blood bags, that's right.
Oh man, MVP.
Yeah, thank you. Do you want me to go and then we'll get to you? Because me and you read one book and similar.
Yeah,
so
go for it.
I'll end with that and then I'll pass it off to you.
Sounds good.
All right, so the books that I read that aren't, I feel like I read something else here. Okay, the additional books that I've read include, where am I going to start here? I'll start with The Green River Killer, which is a book that I got for Courtney for your birthday. For your birthday, and I read it before you did because it was there, and I was like, hey, I want to read this. So anyways...
That's backhanded gifting at its best.
Yeah.
So The Green River Killer was released through Dark Horse Comics and Books. It was written by Jeff Jensen, who is the son of Tom Jensen, the detective who led the charge in the eventual capture of Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer. Cool. And it's illustrated by Jonathan Case, who also illustrated graphic novels and comics such as Dear Creature, The New Deal, and Batman 66, which has awesome artwork. It's a old like Adam West style Batman comic that's really cool. The artwork is actually my favorite part about that. The artwork in this book is amazing. I love it. But yeah, I don't know. So this, what The Green River Killer is, it briskly takes you through Thomas Jensen's earlier years, which is the author's dad. You follow him falling in love with his wife, joining the Navy, joining the police force, becoming a detective, and finally landing a role in landing a leading position in the high-profile case of the Major Crimes Unit. It's truly a love letter to and showcasing Jeff Jensen's admiration for his father. It paints a really good picture of what kind of man Tom Jensen was. Jonathan Case's artwork is truly something special as well. Like I said, you guys can pass that around if you want. I think you flipped through it a little bit.
That's really gorgeous.
Yeah, it's incredible. I was super excited when he got it for me.
Jensen and Case, that's the thing. So this happened in what year? It was in like the 80s is when this started, Courtney? Or Courtney or Buzi, you guys are the serial killer people.
I think that he started killing in the late 80s through the 90s.
Yeah, because that would make sense, yeah, because they find really cool ways of transporting you back to like the time that the crimes happened. Like there's certain pages where there's posters for Friday the 13th Part 3, or there's references to Star Wars The Last Jedi, and one of my favorites is there's like they're watching Hollywood Homicide on TV. Do you guys know what that is?
No.
With fucking Harrison Ford and Josh Hartnett. It was a terrible movie, but I'm like, I haven't thought about that movie in 10 years. And
yeah, it's 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Cool.
And they also reference Finding Nemo in it, which made me think like, well, because like he was, I think they caught him around the time Finding Nemo came out or something, or it was like shortly after that. So it had me thinking, how many people were murdered while I was watching Finding Nemo when I was a kid?
Twisted.
That's where my mind went with it. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it's something, if you're interested in serial killers or even just, graphic novels they're pretty easily digestible. It is pretty twisted. There's it opens up with, I didn't know anything about Gary Ridgway, and Courtney had told me that she probably thinks he's the worst, or I think
he's one of the worst.
I need to read this.
Yeah, I became fascinated with him after I read the book. I watched a whole bunch of interviews on YouTube with him, and
without me also. I'd just like to point that out.
Yeah, he's a psychopath.
Yeah, he's crazy.
And I don't know, he's just like, it's more interesting. It's really interesting hearing the side of the guy who was in charge of capturing him, more so than just the heinous shit that Ridgway did.
Did he kill kids?
No,
was that his thing?
Prostitutes.
No, prostitutes.
Well,
but
sex workers. But back then.
Also, this isn't a spoiler because it's history, and it's the first 3 pages of the book. But the first 3 pages, it shows you him going up to just a kid playing in the forest, and he just stabs him.
Yeah.
So that actually did happen. He was a teenager when he did that.
Everything in there happened.
I'd also like to just point out as well that Mitch got this for me as a gift. My first graphic novel I ever read was My Friend Dahmer, and the second graphic novel that I'll ever read is Green River Killer. And I just think it's interesting that the only two I've never read
It
graphic
is
novels,
an
so
amazing way to play around with
Yeah.
the true crime genre.
well, and that's what I think.
Like-
I think this will be a good way to get me into them,
It's
just
super
because
cool.
I'm reading about things that I truly enjoy.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
Well,
More than,
like
like-
to read about, I should say, not enjoy.
I hear you.
Yeah, enjoy might have been a bad word.
Yeah.
I got a whole list of graphic novels that you'd like in comic books, but yeah, that one I definitely recommend checking it out if you can. The hardcover edition just came out. That's when I got Courtney, so I think it's fairly what's it called? Affordable as well. It's not super overpriced. Going on from that, I read The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, who's the writer of A Head Full of Ghosts and The Disappearance at Devil's Rock, which is the book that Buzi will be reading next month. I had bought this book in the summertime when Courtney and I went up to a cabin with her family, and I started it there, and then it was just one of those times where I just couldn't focus on anything, so I put it down, and I eventually went back to it because I was like, I should finish it. I really liked what I read, and I will just say at the top that I fucking love this book. It's definitely my favorite book I read this month. I've
heard nothing but good things about all of Paul Tremblay's books.
Yeah, and like, so this is the first one that I've actually read, but I've always wanted to read A Head Full of Ghosts, and
I read that. I
have that
one a couple
one
months ago.
At home right now, and I'm going to read it, I think, either next month or the month
cool.
after.
It's such a different take on how to read a book, almost. Like you'll see when you read it. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and it's currently being adapted to screen by Oz Perkins, who's the son of Anthony Perkins, and he also directed The Black Coat's Daughter,
which is my favorite.
Cool.
One of my favorite.
it's
I
a
got to
really-
read it before it comes out then.
Yeah, so I do want to read that book, but Cabin at the End of the World is just a really interesting and fresh take on the home invasion subgenre. The protagonists are partners Andrew and Eric, and their adopted daughter named Wen. I'm going to read
Wen?
Wen, yeah.
How do you spell that?
You know, the funniest part about this is I knew for a fact that Boozy was going to be like,
He was
going
gonna
to
comment about
Wen?
No, but I want to know how it's spelled.
W-E-N.
W-E-N. Yeah.
Oh, because if it was like spelled like the word, I'd be like, how am I supposed to differentiate?
Yeah.
She's adopted, and she's
So you just give her a shitty name because she's adopted?
Oh my god.
well, she's Asian, so like, show some class here, Boozy. Jesus.
Because Wen is such an Asian name.
Yeah, I was
It
gonna.
is actually.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
All the Asian people I know have their like Canadian names.
Have you ever asked them what their Chinese name
Yeah,
was?
they just tell me, they're like, just call me Frank.
Okay, so a recommendation that we got after last episode was from our friend Andy, who liked when Tara read an excerpt from the book, and I plan on getting us all to do that eventually, but for this one,
Good to give you a little flavor.
yeah, and especially if it's you want to show what kind of language they're using and like how the book's written. Like I'll get to that when I talk about the Hellbound Heart, but I'm gonna read just the actual synopsis because it covers what I don't think that you should know anything other than this going into the book. So I'm gonna read it here. So the synopsis is: 7-year-old Wen and her parents, Eric and Andrew, are vacationing at a remote cabin on a quiet lake in northern New Hampshire, a handful of miles from the Canadian border, far removed from the bustle of the city life. Cut off from the urgent hum of cell phones and from the internet, they are more than 2 miles away from their closest neighbors in either direction along an old dirt logging road. On a cloudless summer day, as Wen catches grasshoppers in the front yard, a stranger unexpectedly appears. Leonard is the largest man Wen has ever seen, but he is young, 24 and a half years old, he tells her, and friendly, with a warm and wide smile that wins her over almost instantly. Leonard and Wen continue to talk and play until three more strangers, 2 women and a man, all dressed like Leonard in jeans and button-down shirts, come down the road carrying strange, menacing objects. In a panic, Wen tells Leonard that she must go back inside the cabin, but before she goes, her new friend tells her, "None of what's going to happen is your fault. You haven't done anything wrong, but the 3 of you will have to make some tough decisions. I wish with all my broken heart you didn't have to." As Wen sprints away to warn her parents, Leonard calls out, "Your dads won't want to let us in, Wen, but they have to. We need your help to save the world, please." And that's, yeah, so it's
Some
like...
cult activity?
I got chills just because I know how
I'm so
it ends.
excited to read
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it is fucking it's very twisted. It's very, you can read it really fast. It's I really enjoyed Paul Tremblay's writing style, but I feel like it's gripping, it's intense, it's heart-wrenching, and sometimes it's hard to read because it gets brutal at times. Tremblay has received some criticism, not always in the negative way, but for leaning heavily towards ambiguity in his endings. And I know that was something Courtney mentioned in Head Full of Ghosts. But apparently he's done this in all 3 of his books now. And for me, I feel like he just doesn't want to give... I haven't read the other books, so I can't fully comment on it. But you can tell that he's an author who doesn't want to give you all the answers. He wants to make his readers work with him.
That.
Yeah,
and
I think
like
that's fine.
And I think that... But there's a time where you can go too far, and you got to give enough for it to be a story, or it to have an ending. And I know that a lot of the criticisms for this book have revolved around the ending, but I personally liked the ending, and I feel like I was thinking about it for days after I finished reading it, and every time I think about it, I'm like, fuck, that was a good book. Like, I really, really enjoyed it. I didn't feel cheated, and I felt like my times... I didn't feel cheated by the time I closed the book, but huge thumbs up from me, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Buzi thinks of it next month.
How many stars
Sweet.
did you give it?
4.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's like because a 5 out of 5 needs to be something real fucking special for me. But I really enjoyed this book. I'm a little bit of a harsher critic when it.
Yeah,
when
you
it
are.
comes to you. But no, I really enjoyed it, and I'd recommend it to pretty much anyone, especially if you're into the home invasion subgenre. I look forward to reading A Head Full of Ghosts, especially, and
Right
whatever he
on.
does moving forward. The last book that I read, I already talked about a little bit on our last episode with Craig Silliphant, so I'm going to use this as a gateway into Tara's picks because I know Tara read it as well. Or did you finish reading it and everything?
Yep.
Okay. Stephen
Of course
King's
she
Pet,
did. Do not question her.
Stephen King's Pet Semetary. So all of us saw the movie last week.
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't know. Like, this is a book that I read. I'll just give my brief thoughts and I'll pass off to you, Tara. But I read this book when I was younger and definitely not old enough to understand the full weight of it.
For sure.
I do feel like this is one of Stephen King's best books that I've read. It's definitely one of his like shorter ones. It's pretty concise. With that being said, there's still some fat that could be trimmed in it. I don't think that it's a perfect book, but I think that it's an interesting story that is held up incredibly well, and it is somehow, even though we are all so desensitized now, there's nothing that will ever desensitize you from the thought of a child dying.
For sure.
And also the thing that makes this book so effective is their time that they spend on the mother and the father, like Lewis and Rachel, and how you actually feel their grief. Like, it is a fucking miserable read.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed revisiting it. I would put it near the top of Stephen King's books that I've read. I like both of the film adaptations, but there's like, I can understand how neither of them included Gage while Gage is killing Judd, telling him that his wife liked to get ass fucked. Like,
Yeah, that's pretty messed up.
when I was reading it, I was like, oh my god, like my jaw was on the floor.
Stephen Cocaine.
Edge-
Stephen King used to do a hell of a lot of cocaine.
Yeah, he's
And
a
you
little
can tell.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
edge lord for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it still holds up. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I think that's all I have really to say about Pet Semetary is that the only real criticisms that I have is, even though it is tight, there is still some more fat that could be trimmed. There's a lot of he's overly descriptive of certain things, and he spends some times with some characters that I don't feel pay off.
Yeah.
But the thing that both of those movies are missing that you can find in this book is the genuine heartbreak that you can feel, and the treatment of Victor Pascow and Judd. Like, it's I should note that I started listening to the audiobook of this, which
Right.
was narrated by Michael C. Hall, which is Dexter, and he's fucking awesome. Like, he is so he narrates the hell out of that book. He did a great job. But I just found myself like not being able to pay close enough attention while listening. I know, and that's nothing against audiobooks or people who like audiobooks, but it just wasn't keeping my attention. So I was
Certain
like,
audiobooks just serve better as
I want to sit
certain
down and
books
read
are
this.
better as just the original.
Well, just having yourself hold it and
Yeah.
read it. And that's what I want to do. I want to really spend some time with it and focus on it rather than listen to it while I'm in traffic,
Yeah.
But so I did, I listened to a couple chapters on there, and then I just found the chapter I was at, and I've carried on from there. And yeah, I finished it the day that the movie came out, and thumbs up from me. Terry,
Right
what
on.
did you think of Pet Semetary? And then we can get on with all the other stuff that you read.
Sounds good. So yeah, I have pretty much the exact same review of Pet Semetary as you, Mitchell. Like, I read it when I was quite a bit younger, And rereading it now, I'm like, how in the hell did I read this when I was younger? Like, did I even have a sniff of what the hell was going on? Because you definitely now I feel like the grief and the torment that they went through, and just the overall like theme of death and dealing with death and everything like that is, you know, pulled throughout the entire book, that it totally went over my head when I was younger. Some parts of the book drag.
Yeah.
And so since I was rereading it, I did like speed skim through parts that I knew were, you know, as you call them, fat. Yeah. But yeah, no, definitely holds up, and like probably easily my top 3 Stephen King books.
It made me want to read Kerri again.
Yeah, made me want to read Thinner again, which is weird because Thinner, like,
it's good.
I remember loving Thinner.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I remember really loving it, and like it gets a lot of flack, so it's probably going to be one of those books that I revisit and go, oh yeah, this wasn't as good as I thought it was at the time.
It's such a weird concept.
Exactly.
I started reading it, I think, last year or the year before, and I was enjoying it at the time, but then something else caught my eye and I ended up never going back to it. But
it scared the
I think
shit out
now
of me.
if I tried to go back to it now, I'd really like it, because it's got that whole like gypsy
It's got curses and stuff. Yeah.
I want to revisit the movie too. I think it was just a TV movie, but I watched it when I was a kid and I watched it. It scared the fucking shit out of me.
I love the cover of the movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, I reread Stephen King's Pet Semetary, and then also loved the movie for what it's worth. The remake, I absolutely loved it. I enjoyed every bloody minute of it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought
there were a couple. No, what I said after the movie when we were walking back to the cars, there were a couple moments where the acting pulled me out,
which is crazy,
of the movie. But there was in the first little bit, the actor who plays the father, there was just some like cheesy lines that he threw out that just, they were just too...
It's an Oliver thing. Me and you are the only people who have complaints about Jason Clarke, and I have to apologize. I know Lana got a little upset with my review of Jason Clarke in that movie because she thinks he's real hot.
No, like the second half of the movie...
He says Boston in a sexy way, I think.
Yeah. The second half of the movie, he like really just awesome. Was amazing. But that first half, there was like just some cheesy dad moments where I was like, this is just not...
Yeah, Tara, this is a book club. Can you please stop trying to make this about movies?
Okay. Just wanted to... Okay, so anyway, reread
Start your own damn podcast.
Had to put my 2 cents in. So Stephen King's Pet Semetary, reread that. I also reread a book that I talked about on our first chapter of the book club, which was... It's actually 3 books together. It's called The Betrayal, The Secret, and The Burning by R.L. Stein. So I noted this as one of my gateway into the horror thriller genre.
It's a thick book.
Yeah,
it's so nice.
It looks intimidating. It's 500 and some pages, 525 or whatever. But it's written for like a 12-year-old.
Okay.
Yeah. So it looks impressive, but I read it in, I think, a day.
Oh, it's got like that big font too.
Yeah. So
can I see the big font?
Totally. So I reread
like
this
the
book.
spacing on it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely written for the, 12, 13-year-old Tara that read it back in the day, and I can see why I liked it back then. I would 100% not recommend anyone to read it now.
I want to read it though. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, like I read it 100% for nostalgia purposes, and it was interesting to me because what I remember from the book, what stood out so much for me was the character of Nora, and she is barely in the book, like barely, and the writing is not great. It's a lot of the same kind of thing happens over and over again, and you're like, oh really, this again? We're actually gonna play this game again. So
no Fear Street for Tara.
No Fear Street will be in my future.
Well, maybe your kids, they're getting to the age where they're gonna be reading stuff.
Well, I don't know about that just yet, but
no.
But yeah, so I read it. The 2 books that I read as like supplementary reading were 2 rereads for me. So they were both quick and
Pet
kind of
Sematary,
skim
yeah.
throughs,
Nice
right?
to revisit, though, right?
Yeah, and it really like primed my brain for wanting to seek out some new stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, Buzi, you just read your book of the month.
You guys have all these piles, and I just have one.
That's fine.
That's okay.
That's fine. All right. So I think we're good to. We're gonna move on to our main feature, which we will each discuss our books of the month. So we'll be right back after this theme. All right, and we have arrived at our main feature topic, which we will all be doing in-depth, spoiler-free reviews of the books that we chose to read. Like you said before, we are choosing at least one book a month that we all have to get through. If for some reason we can read more, great. If we can't, Buzi, that's fine. Mm-hmm. And the whole point is to just at least read one book a month and talk about it on here. So let's do what we did for the pre-feature. Let's start off with Courtney, and then we'll go to me, and then Tara, then Buzi, if that works for you guys.
Sounds good.
Girl, guy.
Sure.
2019.
Equality.
Yeah.
That's right.
Courtney, what did you read? Tell us again, and just have at her, girl.
Okay, so as I said earlier, I read A Serial Killer's Daughter, My Story of Hope, Love, and Overcoming. So it's written by Kerri Rawson. So that's her married name. So Kerri Rader would have been her real name. So basically, it starts out with the day that she found out that her father was the BTK killer.
Yeah, because the cops come to the door, right?
Yeah, so she's sitting in her apartment by herself and her husband's at work, and there's this guy sitting in his car outside the apartment, and she thinks that he's there to hurt her.
Oh my God.
And she's calling her husband being like, you need to come home, like there's this guy that's sitting outside. So he comes up to the door, and she's like, just so you know, like my husband's on his way home, and he's like, I'm actually an FBI agent. And at first she didn't believe him, so she like asked for his credentials and stuff like that. So it starts off with the day of, and then the rest of the book goes through her childhood from like her being born, and it's all just, the whole thing is about her childhood and growing up with Dennis as her father, and then mixed in between she'll say like, oh, and this is when my dad killed so and so, and this is when my dad killed so and so.
Like punch.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's her trying to figure out what was going on in her dad's head, because he was being, for the most part, a pretty normal dad, but he was just doing these really terrible things. So I'm not gonna lie, I was hoping it would go a little bit more in detail to the crazy stuff, because that's what I like to read. So I actually just wrote some notes down about BTK that I want to go over, just so for people who are reading, if they or listening, if they don't know about him. So Dennis Rader is known as the BTK killer, which stands for Bind, Torture, Kill. So he was just like a regular guy. He was a family man, a church council president, and a scout leader. Ooh. Which I think is super interesting. So he killed 10 people over a 17-year period. And he was caught on February 25th, 2005, which just happens to be my 15th birthday.
Oh my God.
So I
That's amazing.
I share a birthday with O.J. Simpson.
Do you really?
Yeah, and Tom Hanks. So it kind of weighs up.
Yeah, and I think that's so funny, because I remember that day, and I remember seeing the news, and I think that's actually probably one of the things that made me the way that I am today. Because I mean, I remember seeing all the People magazines with John Benet Ramsey and stuff, but I was only 5 years old at the time too.
Yeah.
I just remember seeing this little girl.
Yeah, I kind of
on the
remember that
cover
too.
of the
You
magazines.
never got why. It was just,
No,
why is this girl everywhere?
not until later, right?
I found out about John Benet Ramsey through last podcast on the left.
Oh my
Are
God.
you serious?
Yeah.
Their episodes
And
are...
No, but their
wild.
episode on John Benet Ramsey in particular, I was like, how are they getting away with this? They were they were doing impressions of John Benet Ramsey getting killed.
Jesus.
It's fucking hilarious.
It's wild.
Oh my God.
So, back to Dennis. So
Dennis, you old dog.
Oh,
you.
he is an old dog.
I just like, because he only killed 10 people.
Yes,
What do you mean
that are
Well, no,
proven.
because like look
yeah.
at Ridgway, he killed like 80 or something
Well,
like that.
he was convicted of 48, but they think that number is closer to at least 100.
Yeah.
Holy
But the thing
Yeah.
is, like, and I get that he's killing people in brutal ways too, but I remember, I'll never forget watching the documentaries that I watched on BTK and thinking, this guy is the worst of them all. I thought he was worse than Dahmer, worse than all of them. I was like, if you hear what he did to people, it is like, you are the absolute bottom of the barrel. Like, he's okay. Sorry, continue.
So as a child, he tortured and killed animals, of course.
Which is fairly normal for all
Very,
serial killers.
very
Well, we've
normal.
all been there.
Oh my God. So he served 4 years.
My newts.
R.I.P. Newts.
He served 4 years in the U.S. Air Force, and lots of his family had served in like Vietnam and stuff like that. They come from like an army type family.
You'll actually see that a lot in serial killers.
You
too.
do.
That's
You see a
recurring
lot
theme.
of that military background, right?
Yeah.
So he married his wife in 1971. Her name's Paula, and at that time he was trying to major in administration of justice. He was very, very into police and that kind of thing.
You
Just
also
like
see that
a lot of
Yeah.
them, right? It's
Power problems.
It's wild.
Power and authority.
Yeah,
Yeah.
power complex.
So in
It's a control thing.
It
Yeah.
is a control
For
thing,
sure.
absolutely. So in 1974, just shy of his 29th birthday, which we were talking about last night, I'm like, oh my God, Mitchell, that's you right now.
Yeah.
Like, how fucked up is that?
I could be doing so much more with my life.
You really could.
Shoot for the stars.
That's right. So he killed 4 members of the Otero family. So there was the wife and the dad, and then 2 of their kids, and then their last son wasn't home, and their son came home to find the bodies. So I think that 3 of them, the wife, the dad, and the son, were found like tortured and beaten and killed, and then the little girl, who was like 11 years old, I think, was found hanging from the roof.
That's the one that bothered me so much, because they go through how he would like hang her till she was just about to die and let her down. And
Oh my
throw her out,
God.
and she's an 11-year-old girl.
And so this is really important for later. After they were dead, he masturbated in the basement, and he left DNA evidence behind that 30 years later would link him.
Trying to say it's the bathroom.
Jesus.
Okay. So 3 months after the Otero murders, he killed Catherine Bright, and her brother Kevin was there at the time, and Dennis tried to kill her brother too, and Kevin played dead basically and ended up getting away. So he's the only known survivor of BTK. So after that, Dennis started writing letters and making menacing phone calls to the police because he wanted attention. He wanted to be known. The very first letter he actually left in a book in the library. And so some like old lady or something like that found the note in the book and gave it to the police and the news and stuff like that. And so that's when he actually named himself. He gave himself the BTK moniker. So he had his first child, a son, in 1975. And that's when he kind of took a little bit of a break for about 3 years. And that's when he began installing security systems around Wichita, Kansas. And he did that for about 10 years, which is obviously interesting that he's keeping these families safe. And it's like, how many of those families?
It's another control thing.
It is, for
That's
sure.
a really good job. I've thought about doing that.
So
You don't need a ticket to do it, and you make good money.
it is a good job, actually, yeah. So then his wife was pregnant with their second child, Kerri, the one who wrote the book. And I believe he killed 2 people while his wife was pregnant with Kerri. And that year when Kerri was born in 1978, that's when the police finally were like, okay, we have to let the public know that there is a serial killer. So they held a press conference about it. And then this is so crazy. So because he would break into people's houses and basically wait for them to come home. And he had been scouting out this lady. Her name was Anna. And he followed her for a long time and broke into her house and was waiting and waiting and waiting. And she never showed up because she had ended up staying out later that night than she had planned. So he ended up leaving. But then he sent her a poem in the mail.
Oh my God.
And the poem was titled, "Oh, Anna, why didn't you appear?" And it's really fucking creepy to listen to. I wish I had it.
Oh, that's so creepy.
Yeah. And so then after Kerri was born, he went quiet again for a little bit. Actually, for quite a while.
And that's what happens. Kids always get in the way of what you want to accomplish.
New babies will suck the life right out
They
of you.
will, yeah.
Suck the life force right out.
So between 1985 and 1991, he killed 3 more people. And then after that, done. Basically like it never happened. And then in 2004, which marked the 30th anniversary of the Otero slangs, the Wichita Eagle posted a big story about BTK and, you know, what happened, who was this guy, blah, 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 blah. And so, of course, Dennis wanted to get back
Back in the killing game.
Back
wanted
in the limelight.
people to know that he was still around.
Exactly. And you know what? Like, that's totally that's part of his personality, right?
Yeah, it's a big ego thing.
Absolutely. So he started talking back and forth with the police again, and they would post like personal ads in the newspaper, and he would respond to them. And so basically he asked them, because he wanted to send them this stuff.
This is the biggest dipshit
Oh
move
my god,
ever.
it's so wild. So he had asked them if he were to send them a floppy disk, if they would be able to trace it. And of course the police would, no, we can't trace floppy disks.
Oh my god.
So he sent them a floppy disk, and they were able to trace it to his church computer. And the person who signed in's name was Dennis. Oh, guess who's the president of the church council, Dennis
Shut
Rader.
up.
That's how they found out who he was.
Wow.
So I'll just start with that. Oh, jeez Louise. Yeah, so
That's what happens when your ego gets in the way of... Because you'll see that a lot.
That's when they get caught.
He could have gotten away. Well, not necessarily, actually, because of the DNA evidence.
But they would have to have him on file, and the chances of linking those things.
That's very true. He probably didn't have his DNA on file.
No.
So
Don't you need to if you're a cop?
he wasn't a
He wasn't a
cop.
cop.
Oh, I thought he was.
No, he
No, he's going to
studied
law
criminal
school.
justice.
That's what it was.
But
Yeah.
I do have
Yeah.
another note on sort of that later on here. But so one thing I noticed while reading the book was when Kerri would talk about her parents, for the most part, she would just call them dad and mom. She hardly ever would say, my dad. It was always just dad. And I don't know if that was a way of her kind of...
Disassociated.
Yeah. And I thought that was really interesting. There was one or two times where she actually did say my dad, but for the most part, it was just dad. So one thing that I found interesting was Dennis and Paula's wedding song was We've Only Just Begun.
Oh.
Which we all know from 1408 is the creepiest song on the planet. And I just think that was a little bit of foreshadowing for what was going to come. So when he was installing these security systems, his family would always be like, because there was a killer on the loose, they thought that they needed one as well. And he would always just say, no, you guys are safe. We don't have anything to worry about. And it's like, yeah, because he's the one who's out killing these people. So one thing that he did for one of the letters that he sent into the police, he literally just walked up to a clerk at a news station who was walking into work and handed her the letter and told her to give it to someone. And then he walked away. And then they opened it and realized that it was a BTK letter. And of course, she didn't have enough wherewithal to know who he was, right? So that was pretty brazen, I thought.
What city was this all taking place in?
Wichita, Kansas.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is this all stuff that they talk about in the book, or is this just facts about Dennis Rader?
Now I'm into the stuff that was in the book. So she actually wrote that in the book. So this is just a quick little snippet from the book. It's literally just a sentence that I really liked, because he went quiet for so long. And she says, "It is truly insane what my father did, taking 10 lives over 17 years and then living the next 14 as if he hadn't." Yeah, it's kind of haunting to think about, you know. So after he was doing the security systems, he was a Park City compliance officer. So he was actually in the same building as the police station for a very long time. He was basically right next door to their office.
Wow.
And they had no idea. So in the book, she basically talks about how he was a very loving father, but how sometimes they had to stay out of his way when his eyes went dark. And that's something that I've read about multiple times, that people would say that his eyes would literally turn black when he would go into a rage, and he just looked like a completely different person. Like his eyes would literally change color and just turn into this like haunting thing.
That's some Satan shit right there.
It is. And he actually talked about it in interviews after, and he called it his Factor X, which basically it was almost like a second personality.
Who came up with that? Isn't that the serial killer gene? Is that called Factor X? Or like?
Oh, I was gonna say, isn't that one of the things that made the Powerpuff Girls?
No.
Oh my God.
I can't remember who talks about it. I think it was Bundy, maybe, who talks about like there's like this thing that all serial killers share. They all have this like in common, and I could have sworn it was called Factor X. But.
No, it is. Well, it might be, but I think that he or his psychologist was the one who named it that.
Yeah.
And it would basically just be this thing would take over, and he wouldn't be able to stop himself. And then as soon as it was over, his rage would subside, and he'd be fine.
Well, that's because Bundy tried to say that he was possessed for a while.
Yeah.
And there's many defenses.
But I think with Dennis Rader, it is true. He literally would just have these moments where he would go psychotic and he could not do anything about it. There's nothing that would have stopped him from doing that.
Was he ever diagnosed with anything like borderline
I don't know.
What's it, multiple personality? What do they call it?
Borderline's such a vague term.
Yeah, it's not borderline. It's
the dissociative personality disorder.
Yes, that's what it is. DAD, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I didn't read into anything after he got arrested. I know I've watched lots of interviews with him over the years, but so as a father, he was good. But then when his eyes would go funny, basically his family knew to just stay away from him because they knew dad was going to go a little bit crazy, but he never got really violent. And then the one time that something happened, his son had like accidentally spilt something on the table or something like that, and all of a sudden he just started choking him.
Holy shit.
And that was basically the only time that something ever happened. So they just kind of brushed it off as if he was
yeah, they do that all the time on The Simpsons.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Homer Simpson thing. So true. And then as soon as his eyes would turn back to normal, he just acted like nothing happened, and he'd be like, "Okay, let's go." Blah 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 blah. And his family just kind of learned how to deal with it, basically.
Well, that's just a way of like diverting from what you're doing. It's downplaying. You know,
Mood
it's like,
swings.
oh, I had my moment.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So, anyways, the way that they caught him was after the floppy disk came back to a dentist, the police. Oh, this is so disgusting, and you're gonna die, Tara.
No.
So the police basically subpoenaed a pap smear that Kerri had gotten done on campus
match
at a
DNA.
health clinic, and they subpoenaed the records, and they made a DNA match to the semen that was left on that 11-year-old girl's leg in the basement from his very first kill.
Holy shit.
So I'm all for these DNA matches and the genealogy and stuff like that, but I just feel like, and Kerri herself was at a fucking loss when she found out that they got her
that's
pap
how they
smear
matched
record.
it.
Like it's such a violation of her own rights, and she felt like she was the reason why her dad
For sure. That would
was
fuck you
caught.
up.
And so a bunch of people basically took that and spun it and told her father, who was in prison, that it was her fault that he was caught and that she was the one who went to the police and gave her DNA and blah blah blah, when it really wasn't at all. It's like just one of those things.
So did she still want to have a relationship with him after this?
So
I think that's a big part of the book, is her trying to deal
Come
with
to
that.
terms with it.
it is, and she's never gone to visit him in prison, ever. She has never, since he got arrested. The time before she saw him, before he got arrested, it was like Christmas or something. It would have been Christmas because he got caught in February. She's never seen him since then. She did write letters to him because it was her father, and this whole thing is her coming to terms with him being a father and a serial killer at the same time. So she did write letters to him just saying, like, we're going through a really tough time. You have to give us some time.
Yeah.
I don't ever think that his wife ended up writing him ever, because obviously the wife would have had the brunt of it, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people actually gave her shit and being like, how could you not have known that your husband was a serial killer? And a lot of people actually thought that she might have been in on it and was just hiding it.
Oh, gross.
So it was a really, like, I can't even imagine what that family went through. So his letters from prison, I'm gonna cry because it's so funny. He is like the most illiterate person on the planet. His letters that he writes to her sound like, that episode of The Office when Kevin decides to cut out words that aren't necessary.
Relevant words.
That's what his letters sound like that he wrote from prison. It's just like, me like the prison block.
Like no
I
time.
get sunshine.
Yeah.
Like it's
Oh my god.
it was hard to read because I was like, how did someone so fucking stupid get away with something like this for 30 years?
Because you can have multiple intelligences.
Exactly. He was smart where he needed to be at
Yeah.
the time. So I have something saved here.
Fuck, I love that episode of The Office.
I know, me too. So he had ended up killing a lady in their neighborhood who was like this old woman, and she had these glass sliding doors, And he had thrown a cinder block through her glass sliding doors and broke in and murdered her and dumped her body elsewhere, which he never really did. He always kept them in the home. But I think he dumped her body in like a field or something like that. And so Kerri, when she went to go get her first apartment, it had glass sliding doors. And in her head, she kept thinking about her neighbor who got killed. And she called her dad to be like, you know, is this something safe? Like, is this an okay thing? Because she was on the second floor. And he was like, oh, yeah, like, you're fine. You'll be okay. And it just always stuck in her head.
Oh, my God.
Then years later, she finds out that it was her dad that had actually done that.
Like, I think we might have talked about this before, but we watched that movie, The Clove Hitch Killer. Good movie.
Love that movie.
That had to have been like a little bit influenced by BTK.
It was influenced by a lot of serial
there's
killers.
There's a lot of BTK in
There's
that.
a lot of BTK, especially like the photos.
The photos and
in the lingerie and stuff, the bondage. Yeah, which.
Oh yeah, because did Dennis Rader dress up like a woman too?
Yeah, and they don't.
So he's a cross-dresser
They
too?
don't really touch on that in the book because I think she
No.
was too embarrassed to talk about it, which is fine.
No, he would just dress up when he'd
But
killed them, though, wouldn't he?
he took photos of himself with like himself tied up and like him in like high heels and women's
That was his way to try and subdue his urges, though. As far
I
as I
think
know,
so.
He would make it look like he did it
He
to
would
someone else.
yeah, he
and
He would
stage
wear
it,
like
so-
wigs and stuff,
Yeah.
wouldn't he? Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, Kerri does not go into that, which is fair, girl. I get
Yeah.
you.
Well, she's like
Well, she's
uber
not like a
Christian, isn't she?
biographer.
Sorry?
She's like an uber Christian.
That's
so, like,
another
that's
thing.
probably like a topic she doesn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole.
I do want to warn people who want to read this book, if you are extremely like anti-religion or whatever your
Grow
choice
up.
is, it will be hard for people to read because a lot of it has to do with her finding hope and overcoming through her belief in Jesus. And like, I'm not a religious person, but I still found it really interesting how she used her faith. And I understand that's why a lot of people have faith, is to help them get through that shit, right? So it's like, oh, whatever. But yeah, it is very, very heavy on religion. And there's this one point where she was at church and she was basically doing a big testimony in front of her congregation, talking about the enemy. Because
That's Satan.
I think at one point she basically thought that it was Satan that was making her father do this, and I was just like, oh wow,
Yeah.
Satan
So
would do that.
I kind of
Satan
just
rules.
skimmed over that and went to the next chapter. So Kerri obviously went through a lot of shit with this, and she suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. She had anxiety. She had depression. She went through teaching jobs on and off constantly because she couldn't be at school. She couldn't concentrate for quite a few years. And I think that she is just so strong and so I can't even go into it because the things that man put her through. And yeah, so that's basically all the notes I have here. There's a lot of letters that she had written and she never sent to her dad because it was all things that she wanted to say. But at the same time, he was still her father. And I think that she didn't want him to be any less alone than he already was in prison.
You gotta be.
That's pretty big of her.
Yeah.
She is a very.
I don't understand that.
So I did just write.
It's because you're a vindictive person.
Exactly. I have a whole lot of hate in my heart.
Yeah.
Like I was like, people have done way less to like people not even directly involved in me, and I'm like, I hope you rot.
Yeah. Exactly. I've dropped people so fucking quick.
Yeah.
So there was this thing near the very end, and it was actually the year after the date that he was caught, and her family went to this like hiking thing and out for dinner and stuff because he was very big into hiking. They always went to the Grand Canyon and all this stuff, and there's actually some pretty cool stories about them on their hiking and family trips. So I just want to read this one passage. It's just showing how much, no matter how your family fucks you over, they're still your family. So she says, Dad should be here. He would have loved this. As I let out a breath, I realized that even on one of the best days, I'd been on edge, anticipating something terrible. My body, my lungs, my bones all felt the weight of the day, knew what it was. We drove back to Phoenix late that afternoon and met a table full of family for dinner. It had been a good day, but as the evening progressed, a sadness descended on me and I cried. I was embarrassed to cry in a restaurant in front of a bunch of my family. In low voices, they inquired after me and I said, Dad, I miss him. him. It's been a lot today. Grief. Funny thing how it came and went. I missed my father. That was one of the first times I'd admitted that. Was it okay to admit I missed a serial killer? That I loved one? I didn't miss a serial killer. Didn't love one. I missed my dad. I loved my dad. I had no idea what anyone around the table, people I also loved, thought about me. But that was it. That day, he was just my dad, whom I loved and missed. It was always going to be that simple and that hard.
That's powerful.
No
It's
kidding.
super powerful. I just it makes me emotional.
That gave me chills. Yeah.
So it's a really good book and good thing to read, especially if people are going through things that they're like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get through this.
Yeah.
You will.
Yeah.
You will, because if this chick can get through that, you can get through anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Holy shit.
that's it.
Do they go into anything about the son and how he dealt with things?
No.
No?
No.
Hmm.
I think she says a little bit, because I think he might actually have gone to visit Dennis in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he might have actually been one of the only people in the family to ever see him after what had happened. But she doesn't talk about her brother that much. And I think it's just because that they dealt with it in such different ways. And I think she just wanted to focus on how
Well, I think
she
that's a
dealt
common
with it.
thing, not to go into like male-female thing, but I think males deal with grief different than
Absolutely.
females
Absolutely they do. And everyone does deal with it differently. But yeah, no, she doesn't touch on that much. She does touch on her mom, basically, as well, just being
Just totally fucked up.
totally fucked up, and the backlash that she received. And
I hate that so much.
after
Yeah.
he went to prison, she was left to pay the bills. And so she had, a single job. She had kids to take care of. She had a mortgage to pay. And basically she was losing her house. And some random, I don't know, I think she had actually... Someone stepped in and paid off the remaining balance of her mortgage for that house. Some random person came and just paid it off and never said who they were.
That's amazing.
So she was able to move
Yeah,
and
'cause
get
you
a
wouldn't
new
be able
place.
wouldn't be able to sleep in the same bed. You wouldn't be able
No.
to.
Yeah.
So
for
yeah.
Seriously.
And I
of
remember
those-
reading that and just being like, there are good people in this world. While these other people are giving her shit and saying that she had something to do with it. And while her entire world is coming
Yeah.
apart, someone stepped up and
Well, you
paid
gotta-
off
you look
what
at-
she needed.
You look at stuff like what the world is dealing with over the last couple of years, especially. But like, I know there's a movie called Beautiful Boy, not the one with Steve Carell, but there's another one. I think Michael Sheen is in it, but it's about parents whose son shoots up a school, and like how they have to deal with it, like how everyone just like blames the parents and everything.
Yep.
It's like it's not always that. Like, there's no way people can expect. Like, there's no way she was thinking my dad's a fucking serial killer.
No.
Like, what would ever make you think that unless your dad's Diego?
Well, and yeah, that's exactly right. But when the FBI agent came to her door, she did not believe it for a second.
Yeah.
She's like, no, you have the wrong guy. There's no way. Like, my dad's a good man. He works at the church. He like she did not believe it for weeks, basically, until they started talking more about it. And then she started putting two and two together.
Cool. Will you recommend it to people?
I do recommend it to people. I think it's an interesting
I'm
read.
looking forward to the day where you say that you don't recommend.
I will. There'll be
Yeah,
a day.
I know,
I've
but-
read books. Think of The Troop.
Oh,
I hated that book.
Yeah,
You
and
loved
were,
it.
Yeah, you were wrong. Me and Buzi both
Oh my
liked it.
god.
That was a good book.
Yeah, the troop was really
I
good.
liked the book.
She doesn't like bugs.
But I don't like bugs, and a lot of it was about these like alien
Parasites
worms.
and shit.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
So,
it got really
not my
fucky at the
jam.
end.
And that's like Buzi's bread and butter is
Oh,
parasites.
I was going to mention, going back to something you'd said before about somebody paying off the mortgage.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, I would like to know, and the information probably isn't out there, but whether the home was torn down directly after, because that happens all the time.
Yeah, they did that with Gacy's
I
house, didn't they?
believe that they demolished. Oh, I can't remember.
Yeah,
'Cause
they-
I read
they
I finished
demolished,
this
like,
book like
all those
4 weeks
houses.
ago.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Be a
But,
tough resell.
yeah. Yeah.
No doubt.
But there's those creeps out there.
That's true.
So you just have to, like, if you were
Turn it
doing
into a
that, you'd have to
BTK
gloss
museum
that
or
over.
something.
A lot of history in this house.
Yeah.
Well, and it's and the only reason this happens with women so much is because most serial killers are men. But like the women who get obsessed with serial killers and want to like marry them and shit, like and
That's
have
actually,
relations-
there's a book about that I wanted to get. It's serial killers and the women who love them.
Yeah,
and
I've heard
it's
about that, yeah.
very interesting.
If you get it, can you buy me a copy too?
Sure.
Thank you.
and she'll send you money.
Oh yeah, obviously. No, it'll be a gift.
Okay, I guess are you good for me? to
Yeah,
move
sorry,
on?
that was longer than I expected to talk. So thanks
No,
for
that's
listening.
cool.
No, that was good.
Sounds really good.
Very concise. Cool. Well, I will go next, and the two books I'm discussing is The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker and Black Hole by Charles Burns. I'm going to start with The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker. So I had never read this book before, but I realized recently in the last couple of years that I'm a big fan of Hellraiser. So it's based off this is the book that is Hellraiser, and Clive Barker went on to direct the movie himself. It's a really short book. It's 160 pages, and the writing is big. It's basically a short story. And that's the thing, is you could read this book in the same time that it would take you to watch the movie. That's why I chose two books.
Yeah.
And so Hellraiser for me is like wine. And I don't mean that in a pretentious way. I mean that when I was a kid and family members would give me wine, I'd be like, "This is fucking disgusting. Why do you guys like this?" And when I was a kid,
better with age.
When I was a kid, I would watch Hellraiser, and I was just like, "I don't get it. This feels like Young and the Restless, but with a whole bunch of gore." I'm like, "This is horrible." I hated Hellraiser. I was like, for years, even when I hadn't revisited Hellraiser for 15 years because I was like, just convinced I don't like Hellraiser. It's just not my thing. Like a dumb consumer that I am, Arrow Video released a beautiful box set of Hellraiser, and it was like $150. I'm like, why do I need to buy this? I was like,
it is gorgeous.
I don't even like these fucking movies. But then I was like, fuck it. I had some extra money. I bought it. And then I rewatched the first one with Courtney that time, and I fell in love with it. I loved it. It's just
I liked it a lot too. I had never seen it. That was my first time. It would have been about a year and a half ago, maybe?
Yeah, 2 years, something like that. Yeah. So it's like wine in the way that I didn't like it when I was a kid, but now I could chug a bottle of it on a Monday night. That's kind of where I'm at. That's where I'm at with Hellraiser. Awesome. But yeah, so I'm going to read the synopsis on the back of the book here. It's so Frank Cotton's insatiable appetite for the dark pleasures of pain led him to the puzzle of Lamar Chan's box, and from there to a death only a sick-minded soul could invent. But his brother's love-crazed wife Julia has discovered a way to bring Frank back, though the price will be bloody and terrible, and there will certainly be hell to pay. So it's a short Faustian tale of it's the classic deal with the devil type situation. If you've seen Hellraiser, there isn't a reason for you to read this book, but it's still so good. I think that I love I loved this book and I loved the movie, and Courtney, I wanted to have it fresh in my mind, so we rewatched the movie last night. And what I was surprised by is how much more the movie offers than the book, actually. He delves into a lot more things in the movie, and he fleshes out certain characters more. That's why I feel like the characters in the Hellbound Heart are pretty weak, but it's the concept that's where it's at its strengths, or where its strengths lie. Sorry. But yeah, I think both of them have their own things to offer. With the movie, you have Doug Bradley's Pinhead, who's barely a character in this book. I don't think they don't say Pinhead ever, and it's they mention Cenobites, and in the movie there you get all the practical effects that by Bob Keane, the special effects are just amazing. They're so disgusting. It's such a gross movie in an awesome way. And both of them are so adult, is what I like about them. Is I'm like, of course I didn't like this when I was a kid. It's miserable, and it's it's about a wife, who cheats on her husband with his brother, and she wants to it's a classic tale of greed, adultery, lust. It has some very heavy sexual themes in it, it's the basic theme of it is pain for pleasure, and what pleasure is pain. And the classic line from Doug Bradley is, "We are demons to some, angels to others," and it's all about both ends of the spectrum and how you can want something great and it will actually just tear you apart, and how expecting too many things or not being satisfied with your certain state of life. I'm delving a little deeper in this than I'm sure I'm sure Clive Barker wanted this, but it's what I got from it is you can keep keep getting what you're asked for, and it's just gonna, in the end, it's not gonna end up being a good thing for you. I don't know where I'm going there. I'm gonna just shut the fuck up. I read in. I
understand where you're going with that.
I marked an excerpt from the book to show you, because the thing is, it is written like poetry. It's really well written. But something that they don't touch on in the movie, because while I was reading, I was just remembering, oh, this is the movie. It's just and obviously, but it's they did not stray from it at all. except this one part, and I chose this part to read just to show you an idea of like what kind of disgusting, filthy mind we're talking about here. But this is the opening of the movie Hellraiser, where you see Frank. He unlocks the puzzle box. Cenobites arrive to talk with him, and they basically tell him that they can show him pure ecstasy, and like if he agrees to it or whatever. And he does, and he doesn't realize that they're going to, like, what they're doing is, like, they're taking him to a point of ecstasy through pain, and they're torturing him in the most brutal ways and ripping him apart and everything. And then it gets so bad to the point where he needs to close his eyes. And then once he closes his eyes, he starts picturing other things that are worse than his physical ailments. And am I making any sense?
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, this was not in the movie. So he felt untold tastes upon his tongue, bitter, sweet, sour, salty, smelled spice and shit and his mother's hair, saw cities and skies, saw speed, saw deeps, broke bread with men now dead, and was scalded by the heat of their spittle on his cheek. And of course there were women, always amid the flurry and confusion. Memories of women appeared, assaulting him with their scents, their textures, their tastes. The proximity of his harem aroused him, despite circumstances. So this is while he's being tortured. He opened his trousers and caressed his cock, more eager to have the seed spilled and so be freed of these creatures than for the pleasure of it. He was dimly aware, and as he worked his inches, that he must make a pitiful sight, a blind man in an empty room, aroused for a dream's sake. But the racking, joyless orgasm failed to even slow the relentless display. His knees buckled and his body collapsed to the boards where his spunk had fallen.
Oh my god!
It's like
His what?
His spunk.
Yeah. I said that to Courtney while we were eating last night.
Yeah, and I had to stop eating. I was like, great. Well, I guess I'm done dinner. Thank you.
Just love that worked its inches.
Yeah,
That's the funniest way ever.
I know, but the thing is, it's written so well, but it's so fucking gross.
Yeah.
And I think that Clive Barker has the sickest mind out of anyone, and like that, like to me, I think it's unbelievable that we live in a world with a guy who comes up with these things, and especially this was in the 80s. Like this was. I haven't read any of his recent stuff, but I have read some other things by Clive Barker. I've seen all of his movies, all the ones he's directed and all the ones he's written. And the only one I like more than Hellraiser is Candyman, but that he only wrote Candyman. But yeah, I don't know. It's like I said, it's very brutal. It's definitely, I would recommend reading it if you're okay. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. My brain is moving fast. My mouth's moving faster than my brain. It
does that a lot.
Yeah. If you haven't seen Hellraiser, I would actually recommend reading this first, because the thing about it is you have all the imagery of like, if you've seen Hellraiser, you can put faces to names in the book and everything, and the way that he describes the Cenobites, I think he did a great job in the movie. I love their look in the movie and how everything looks in that movie, but there's something about what your imagination can come up with will be scarier than anything you'll see on screen.
For sure.
And I think it's definitely worth a read if you have any interest in getting into Hellraiser. And it's so easy to read, so read it first. There's enough added in the movie to justify reading them reading and watching back to back. But that's the Hellbound Heart. That's all I'm going to say about that one.
Cool.
So like I said, real short. Okay, and the second book I read is a graphic novel called Black Hole by Charles Burns. It's written and illustrated by Charles Burns, who is an American cartoonist and illustrator. It took him 10 years to eventually complete this graphic novel, and it eventually was released as 12 separate comic books. He strictly uses black and white in his artwork. There's no colors, no grays, and it's fucking gorgeous. I had you guys look through it last time, but it's similar to the Green River Killer, but I honestly think I even like the artwork in this more. But it's set in the 1970s in the suburbs of Seattle and thrives on dissecting the confusing, insecure, and judgmental cloudy years of adolescence. And it's basically, there is a disease going around this town that is spread through sexual activity, so it's like an STD, where it's causing people to grow ailments of some sort, or like one of them grows a tail, another has a second mouth at the base of his neck, another one has webbings between his fingers, and there's like deformities on their ribs.
Cool.
Each person is inflicted with some kind of deformity or growth, and so the book touches on how like some of them will either try and continue to live their lives normally or else they'll go to the woods where there's a whole bunch of other deformed people living there as well, and all the people who have been infected. But I don't know, I thought that this was a really good pick for me to talk. I guess I talked about the Green River Killer, but for the first graphic novel that I chose for the book club, because this really shows what graphic novels are capable of. It's a really strong book. I've read nothing but good things online from people that I know, and then when I went through Goodreads, there's a lot of people who hate this book.
Really?
But I don't understand that, but I also will say I don't understand the complete levels of hype that's getting. I think it's really good. It's a really good book, and it's really interesting. It definitely has themes of, like, It Follows, if that's your thing. They clearly took a little bit from... David Robert Mitchell took a little bit from this. But it's fun. Like, it's funny, and it's bleak, and it's grim, and it's also heartbreaking. There's a lot of times in this book where I think anyone who had a somewhat not normal adolescent grow up... high school years, anything like that, I feel like there's people can relate to this. There's a lot of stuff that you could relate in this book, but yeah, I think that's all. There's not much. I can't read an excerpt from a comic book.
No.
But,
what would you give it?
I gave it 4 out of 5.
Yeah,
I think it's really strong.
Nice.
Yeah, I really liked it, but I definitely recommend people to pick it up and give it a read. But I know Bryson picked it up, so I wonder what he thought of it.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. Oh, we also need to give a shout out to Kent Blue.
Oh my goodness, yes. So Kent, the wonderful, amazing man that he is, listened to our first book club episode where I had talked about trying to find Stephen King's Rage forever and couldn't, and blah, 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 blah. And about 2 weeks after the episode came out, he messaged me on Facebook and was like, you know what? I think I might have a copy of the Bachman books kicking around. So remember when Stephen King tried to be Richard Bachman and write a couple books and have people not know that he was Stephen King, and it didn't go very well for him? So that's when he wrote Rage. So there's a copy called the Bachman books, and it has Rage, The Long Walk. What are the other two again?
I don't know. They're not supposed
I
to
know
be very good.
there's one in there that people say not to read, and then there's a fourth one in there as well. He's like, oh, yeah, if I have it kicking around, I'll send it over to you. And I was like, oh, okay, what did I do to deserve this? Like, you are so incredible.
Kent's the best. All the way from Kentucky. He
All
sent
the
us
way
a
from
book.
Kentucky, yeah.
All the way
so-
from Kentucky. And then he also sent me a copy of his movie Bunny. He was in a like really atrocious, shitty slasher movie.
Nice.
And he's on he's the star of the movie. Like,
That's
he
fantastic.
sent me the DVD. I only wish he would have signed it.
Oh,
But
yeah.
he's
Send
awesome.
me KFC.
He's gonna have to come
I
visit.
think we have that here too.
Yeah.
No, but I want like
From
the-
Kentucky.
Yeah.
That would be pretty funny if he actually mailed you a drumstick.
Oh my god.
So yeah,
I'd eat it.
I
Here's the
want
difference.
So
I want to say
disgusting.
thank you so much to Kent for sending that. I appreciate it so much. It's such a nice gesture.
That's
I
super
think that the
cool.
best thing that you can ever gift someone is a book. So the fact that he looked through his things to find a book that I want to read so bad and actually send it to me just to be a nice guy is so nice.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
that's awesome. So thanks again, Kent. And yeah, that's The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker and Black Hole by Charles Burns. Tara, you're up next.
Right on. So I read Cannabalism, A Perfectly Natural History by Bill Schutte. So I saw this book actually on one of my friend's Instagram stories, and the cover really caught my eye. It's like a frog eating another frog, and it's seemed really cool. So I went and had a look at it in the bookstore and kind of flipped through the pages, and I was like, oh yeah, this is something I definitely want to read. So it was released in 2017, and zoologist, the Bill Schutte, the author, debunks common myths, gives a new understanding to cannibalism's role in biology, anthropology, and history. So it's like it's a science-based book. It's written from like
Factual.
it's
okay.
an anthropological look at cannibalism. So if you like that sort of thing, then you would really like this book. It's written in really digestible language, pun totally intended.
God.
It's super accessible. Like, it's not a, high-minded textbook,
No.
type of book to read. The chapters kind of tick along like little short stories, which I really liked. So he talks about different species of animals and their kind of history with cannibalism. Closer to the end of the book, he gets more into the human cannibalism, which is, of course, what I picked the book up for.
I'm assuming
that's why I wanted to read it. I found the stories about tadpoles and stuff interesting, but and I can see why he started that way, because it kind of builds your understanding of
it goes to like the evolution of cannibalism.
Yeah, so it's really cool.
I
tadpoles,
want to read this
Yeah,
really bad.
Did he talk about
it's super interesting.
Sharks and cannibalism?
It doesn't stand out in my mind that he has.
Do they eat each other or something?
Yeah, they swim in like the womb before they're
yes,
out,
I think he does totally talk about that.
I never knew that.
There's even a drawing in there.
Yeah, there's really cool drawings.
Yeah, there's like peppered through the book are these like just really awesome illustrations. So and that makes it a little more
I would 100%
interesting to read too. So one of the things he talks about during the like more human look at cannibalism is he talks about the Donner Party.
Oh, I was going to ask if the Donner Party was
exactly,
so interesting.
Which I had never heard of.
We had a conversation about it last week.
Yeah, I'd never heard of the Donner Party.
Interesting.
Yeah, so if anybody out there hasn't heard of the Donner Party, in 1846, 87 pioneers set out from Missouri to California. They ran into some bad weather and they had to eat the dead to survive. So out of the 87 people that set out for California, 48 survived. And it goes into a little more detail about how when the rescue party arrived, kind of how they found things. And yeah, exactly. Like kind of describes, finding bones and clothes and all that sort of thing. So that was really cool because I had never heard of the Donner Party before. One of the biggest disappointments in the book is he does not address serial killers. And that I was really, really hoping that I would get kind of like a psychological...
That's a weird missed opportunity.
He gives a reason for it. He does call it out, and he said that there's been enough books and enough stuff written about these.
That's probably also not his field, right?
Yeah, exactly. He is a scientist, and he said he doesn't want to sensationalize.
Yeah, so
right.
Is the serial killers, which
for good reason.
Yeah, for very good reason. I was hoping for some, but that's okay. So
you got that, or I guess no, you didn't. But
well, that's exactly. I'll get to that. So then one thing he does discuss when talking about human cannibalism is the Foray people in New Guinea and Kuru, the disease Kuru. So have you guys heard about Kuru? Yeah, so Courtney has. Okay, so Kuru. So in the early 1950s, anthropologists began to study the Foray people in New Guinea. And one of the most distinctive things about the Foray people is that they ate the brains of their dead as a funeral ritual. They believed that cooking and eating the person was a way to release the person's spirit. So it was a ritual, and everybody from the village would come around and eat various body parts. The brain was typically reserved for the women and children to eat. So Kuru is a disease that is similar to mad cow and has a really long incubation period of like 10 to 13 years. There's even cases of up to 50 years where people have gone from exposure to Kuru to not having symptoms for 50 years, which is insane. So he goes into quite a bit of detail about how they, figured out why these people were dying, and like Kuru was people would start acting really crazy. They actually sometimes called it laughing sickness due to the pathological bursts of laughter that people would.
You should watch Ravenous now that you've read this.
I feel like I've heard of this.
I think Mom, that's one of my early memories of horror is walking in on Mom and Dad watching it. And it's like the most twisted fucking horror movie, but it is awesome. But it's all about like, it's like late 1800s and they're eating, like it's a cannibalism movie. But it's there's a lot of that laughing sickness.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
'cause
It's directed by a
essentially-
female, so you can
nice.
enjoy it openly.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so they... So Kuru is a disease, a prion disease, and prions are like abnormally folded proteins, and so it's believed, or one of they don't know, they don't know where it comes from or where it originated from. There's theories that it's been from inbreeding, like that it's a genetic problem from inbreeding, which makes sense because the 4A people were really like, they marry their cousins and whatnot, and so yeah, let's see here. I found that chapter really, really interesting because it coincided with a podcast that I listened to called This Podcast Will Kill You. Mm-hmm. And it's that podcast, it's these two scientists, and they just talk about diseases that are awful, and they go into like the scientific detail of the diseases, and they go into like all the nitty-gritty disgusting details of the diseases and how it would kill you. Like, it's amazing. Like, it's somewhat like dark humor. And so they did an episode. If you go and look at This Podcast Will Kill You, episode 20, they did an episode on prions. And actually, when I listened to that episode, I thought of you, Mitch, because one type of prion disease is, when you hear about people who cannot sleep, and it's like a genetic disease, like where they just can't sleep at all, and then they just die because of lack of sleep. I was like, oh man, I wonder if Mitch has that. Yeah, anyway.
Is that
so that's a it's a prion disease. So it's essentially like a genetic
I've eaten at a lot of sketchy places.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so I was hoping for a little bit more true crime in this book that I didn't get, but I definitely learnt a lot of stuff that I didn't know. And it's the kind of book where you can you don't have to read the whole thing. Like, you can look at the table of contents. Totally. Like, you could just grab the chapter, whatever chapter looks interesting, and just, chow down on that.
In that one, yeah.
That's on the Exactly Right network now?
Yes.
Holy hell
I saw you had tabs out there. Do you need the book back?
I think those tabs were what I was using just to make my notes.
Okay.
But let me have a quick gander.
I didn't realize that that's on Exactly Right now. That's exciting stuff.
Yeah, I really, really enjoy that podcast.
I don't know what that is at all.
It's the My Favorite Murder Girls. They just started their own podcast network.
Okay.
So the one that Tara and I were talking about earlier today, the Murder Squad, with
That's
Paul
on there.
Holes and Billy
Yeah.
Jensen, that's on Exactly Right.
So Courtney and Tara listen to completely different podcasts than we do. Like,
I specifically only listen to true crime podcasts.
Pretty much.
That's it.
That and some comedy ones I listen to.
I only listen to podcasts if I hear complaining.
Oh my god.
I need complaining in my life.
Yeah, you don't have enough of that in your life.
No,
Anyway.
Not married to this one.
Oh my lord. So after reading that book, I was like, because it's a really easy read, and after I read it, I was like, I really enjoyed that, but I'm just missing that serial killer thing that I was looking for. So I hopped on the old Amazon Prime and I ordered myself the graphic novel My Friend Dahmer.
So
So
yes.
we have all read this book.
Yeah.
And we have all seen the movie, except you haven't seen
I
the
haven't
movie
seen
yet.
the movie, no. So this book arrived and I was super stoked, and literally the day it arrived, I sat down and read it within like an hour, because it's a graphic novel, so it's once again really quick read.
Very easily digestible.
Very
You not
easily.
have parenting to do.
Parenting. let me
my
tell you.
job.
Let me tell you a revelation that I've had recently, Buzi. So I always am annoyed that I can't watch the horror movies that I want to be watching because A, can't watch them while the kids are home. B, my husband won't watch them with me. And so that's frustrating. But what has become like a revelation in my life is I can be reading anything sitting beside them while they're coloring, while they're reading, while they're napping, doing whatever it is. So reading the most heinous stuff while they're watching Paw Patrol or whatever. Like,
I feel
it's
like
totally doable.
You know what? Holy shit. Because I remember, like, my parents would read around me all the time, and I never took that
Exactly.
second to go,
And-
what are they reading?
And interesting
Yeah, but they were reading
thing-
sex stuff.
Yeah, once again, a reference to The Office when Phyllis is listening to the 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh, fuck. I love that
Audiobook.
episode. So and my husband even mentioned, he was like, I think it's really good for the girls to see you reading all the time. I think you're setting a really good example for them.
And that's when they cut his penis off.
Exactly.
I need to lend you my satanic Bible so you can get a picture of them watching Paw Patrol and you read
That would
the
be
Satanic
so
Bible.
funny.
Let's do it. Yeah. So anyway, since book club has started, I've really been able to read a lot of stuff that I didn't think I could, but then I'm like, and my oldest
You just
is
never
7.
thought about it.
So
right?
she's reading now, but like she's not gonna she's not sitting down beside me and if it doesn't have pictures, she doesn't want to read it with me.
My friend
Right?
Dahmer does.
Well, but
I'm still like that.
So interesting. I read My Friend Dahmer while Scout was napping. So she was literally sitting beside me laying beside me on the couch napping, and I read this book.
Nice.
So parenting.
Yeah, that's perfect.
That's how you do it.
You can fit in your life still and in things that you enjoy. It just you have to just be creative about it. So anyway, I really, really liked this graphic novel. I really enjoyed the illustrations. It was a really cool take on just feeling that just bleak, brutal childhood that he had, and like how his mother is just batshit crazy, and so you end up with a little bit of sympathy
It's
for
true.
the guy.
You do.
That's
Which
like what
is-
the problem with the movie and the book
Yes.
is that you're sympathizing with the serial killer.
Yeah.
and,
For
like,
sure.
But you can't understand you can't understand what would ever drive someone to do what he did, but you can understand how fucking harmful that would be.
Like
to,
being human and human emotions are so complex, and
Yes,
like you
they
can, and just like that BTK book, right? Like you can absolutely hate the thing he did, but that is so separate from her experiences of him as a father, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah. Anyway, so I felt a lot of sympathy for Jeffrey Dahmer in this book. Obviously, he's a monster, or was a monster.
Yes.
Not condoning
time.
anything he did, but found it really interesting to see that, and to see that he didn't really have friends.
no, well, he had friends that weren't real friends.
They weren't his
there's-
friends. They kept him around for entertainment's
Yes,
sake.
exactly.
Well, that's like it reminded me
Which
of
is more harmful than having no
Yeah.
For
friends
sure.
at all.
Exactly.
Obviously, mine was absolutely nothing like that. But even when I was reading it, I even thought about like how many of my friends I had growing up we were only friends because we'd make each other do stupid shit.
Exactly.
And it's like that's like there's absolutely no friendship there. It's just you being idiots together.
Exactly.
But in this case, it's just his friends watching. And the best part about it is that's written by one of his friends.
Yeah.
Like by
One of his so-called
quote,
friends.
unquote.
Which makes
Yeah.
it so much more real, and
Yeah, and
Fred.
it does touch in the very beginning. It does touch on him like torturing and killing animals and sort of.
Yeah.
So it's
being obsessed with the doctor and
yeah.
But sorry, just to cut in with that, the only thing that I can draw between those two, like when you're talking about BTK versus Dahmer and these things, is that you have someone who's a process killer versus a product killer. So that's where you can draw a little bit of a line for sympathy. Is Jeffrey Dahmer had to be drunk out of his tree,
Yes.
and he made sure that most of the time is that his victims were asleep, so they
Yeah.
would feel as little as possible, because his wasn't the process. He didn't enjoy the process of it. He liked the end result.
Right.
Versus you looking at BTK, whose
Yep.
whole thing, he enjoyed
Super-
the
He
process
enjoyed it.
of it.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about, I guess not really like feeling sorry for somebody, but where you can see those kind of lines where Jeffrey Dahmer felt like a little bit more of a human when you look at that.
Right.
It's this ultimate need to feel accompaniment, but on such a strange level.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and the fact that like he was so lonely,
yeah.
like so isolated and lonely, and
You need to watch the movie because
Yeah.
the
It's
movie was
so
surprisingly really
good.
good, and it stars Ross Lynch, who plays Jeffrey Dahmer. Plays Sabrina's boyfriend in Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Yeah.
oh, Harvey.
so
Yeah,
good.
Harvey.
He was really good.
Nice.
And then Durf Backdurf is played by Alex Wolff, the son in Hereditary.
Also,
So, like,
Oh,
such
nice.
good actors, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, no.
I want to
Yeah,
rewatch it
like-
'cause it's good.
Like I
I'd
said,
love to
it's
rewatch it.
it's super hard for me to watch horror movies.
it's not a
it's-
horror movie.
Not at
Well,
all.
It's the same thing.
Not
as the
at
book.
all.
But you can't watch with your kids.
But it's not
around.
like I can have it on the iPad while the kids
No.
are playing. Like you don't want them to hear. It's not just seeing it, but hearing it too is sometimes what you want to shield them from.
Well, and there's some like as you'll in the graphic novel where he will like do those really ridiculous pretending that he has a handicap.
Yeah, like he would fake seizures.
Doing those impressions to watch
Who else did that?
To watch it on screen.
You know that I faked 2 seizures at school.
What? What is wrong with you?
Serious?
I got suspended.
I faked asthma attacks.
No, we had a... Why are you shaking your head?
Because I was trying to say something.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's fine.
Oh my god. I had no idea you did that.
I'll tell it
That's
after
fucked
recording.
up.
I was just going to say that to see him do that on film, I think for a child to see would be a little bit harmful. Yeah. Just because it portrays it so poorly and it's very harmful. I don't think.
Yeah, no. Like I've I joke about how like I let my children basically run free range, but I do censor what they watch. Like,
yeah, I would not have wanted to see that as a child because I was so sensitive to that kind of thing growing up with so many friends in school that had different disabilities that would have scarred
messed you up.
It would have been bad. Okay, sorry, Mitchell, go on.
Did you seriously? What grade?
Did it twice. Grade 7.
In grade 7?
Yeah, because I got to the first
Oh
time.
yeah, grade 7 was a rough year for you.
That's when I switched schools, but it was Ian and Nick Conlon who were egging me on to do it, and we had a substitute teacher.
This is coming back to me now.
Yeah, and I fell out. We were reading Narnia. And I fell out of my desk and started having a seizure. And, like, that's... Before people... Like, I was a fucking idiot. 12-year-old. Like, 11-year-old. Like, I've obviously grown to know that that's stupid.
Right.
But Nick stands up on his desk and is screaming at the teacher, "What did you do to him?"
Oh, my God.
And then... So, I got suspended. And then, obviously, the next... Like, I got a stern talking to. And it was like, whatever. I got put up to do it again. Everyone is saying, "Mitch, you gotta do it again." And apparently that teacher wasn't a teacher after that.
Oh, you are a messed up... I faked a couple asthma attacks, though, in high school to get out of class. I'd be like, "Oh my God, I'm having an asthma attack. I need to go to my locker to get my inhaler." And then I just wouldn't come back.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you can't trust kids.
No, for real.
I have so much karma coming my way.
Oh, jeez, man. I can't believe...
Why do you think when I was a TA, the first day I was a TA, the school was put on lockdown for a shooting?
That's karma.
Yeah.
That's karma.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's what I read.
Awesome. Well, take it away, Buzi.
I feel like that's really hard to top. Okay, so I read Thor by Wayne Smith. It was bought by my lovely girlfriend for Christmas, so I was really excited to read it. And it's kind of hard to find, so that was even cooler, I guess. I like collecting things. But it's hard to talk about this without talking about the movie. Because
talk about both. I did the same thing with Hellbound Heart.
Okay, because they're so like versed in each other.
Bad Moon.
With Bad Moon, yeah. So first thing, this is the first book I've ever had where everything is told from the point of, well, not everything. Most of the book is told from the point of view of a dog. So it's super weird is that he kind of goes into the mentality of how a dog thinks, because I kind of actually did some reading about this after. Is dogs are one of the only creatures on this planet that can, it's not that they comprehend language, it's that they can connect syllables, I guess, and word phrasings with certain things, and that's why we domesticated them so well. Whereas like most other things don't have that level of, like a dog doesn't know what the word like outside means, but he understands the action that if you say
he or she,
the tone.
He or she, yeah, sorry. What the fuck?
How dare you assume it's gender?
That they understand that like you're going to do a certain process to let them out into a different area.
Right.
So what's really interesting is they go through this book, and a big part of this book is pack mentality, because the whole process this dog goes through is finding out where he fits within a pack, which is his family, and then where the uncle, which comes in after, who is our antagonist, comes in, where he fits in the pack. And there's like this weird thing where he's trying to figure out how he can defend the family that's part of his pack from the uncle who's also been initiated into the pack. So differences between the book and the movie, you can kind of tell that because this is a fairly short book, they kind of amalgamated a lot of characters into one just because nobody's super fleshed out. It's under 300 pages, so they kind of had to. So in the book, there is a mother, a father, there's 2 sons, and there is a daughter. The daughter is like a baby and doesn't really play a role in this. And then the 2 sons, because in the movie, it's just a mother and a son. So they brought the 2 sons to be one character, and then they completely got rid of the dad element in this, which is weird because the dad plays such a huge part in this book because the dog considers him the alpha male. So everything is kind of based on where how he deals with things based on how the dad deals with things, because he always wants to follow the lead of the pack leader. And he goes into a lot of stuff about it's weird. He did so much in-depth stuff with how a dog processes you shaming it or calling it bad names or inflections in your voice even. Anyway, so basically the whole do you mind if I give most of this away? It's a movie. I mean,
No, you can go ahead.
okay, so basically it's a uncle who is in Budapest, I believe, with his girlfriend. He is a photographer and a journalist.
Wait, these are the people now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, sorry. These are the people. So this is the uncle. He and his girlfriend are attacked by a werewolf. The girlfriend passes away, and he survives. But because he's been bitten by a werewolf, he starts transforming, and it's not only full moons; it's every moon. So every night he has to go out, and he's basically trying to deal with stopping this. So he's like chaining himself up and that sort of stuff. And then it's basically the dog starts sensing that something's wrong with him because the dog and the uncle used to be really good friends. So basically the uncle's life is falling apart, and he has to move onto the property with the normal family. So the start of the book kind of goes through the whole process, which is more of the kind of structural stuff that's not as interesting, but it's building up the family dynamic and how everyone interacts with each other. And then once you get in the actual story, it goes by very quickly, because pretty much as soon as the uncle shows up at the house, that's when everything starts happening right away.
Shit
so
hits the fan.
like instantly. So basically, the dog just starts tailing the uncle or trying to follow him all the time, or sometimes he's locked up at night and he's getting in trouble because he's barking all the time to go outside because he's trying to communicate with the family to let them know that something's wrong. And then it just kind of goes through there, and then much like the movie, it goes through where the dog actually has to fight the werewolf because because the werewolf starts going after the entire family. Yes.
Are you going to read that after?
Would you like me to read this?
Yes, please.
About the author. Wayne Smith, a former disc jockey, bike messenger, bookstore clerk, and cab driver, lives in San Francisco. Thor is his first published novel.
I think that's so cool.
I love it.
He has.
Isn't that incredible?
He had 3 other novels, and I haven't heard of the other ones.
What a guy.
Yeah, this was kind of a shot in the dark that it got made into a movie, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
I just was
okay.
like, that's the coolest thing.
What year is that book published?
That's what I'm
early 90s. I think it's 91 or 92.
Yeah, the
movie came out in
92. Yeah, the movie came out in 98.
Yeah, 98. So yeah, it just kind of goes, and there's certain characters that are touched on in the book that are fleshed out in different ways in the movie. There's like a kind of a seedy door-to-door sales guy who has a bigger role in the movie. Yeah. And in this, it just kind of reinforces this sub-story that the dog might have to get put down because he's very aggressive, because it all happens at the same time. So you basically have this door-to-door sales guy happen along with the dog being very aggressive to the uncle. So it's becomes this separation almost within the family and the ranks. And it's this dog keeps getting in trouble for all this stuff, but his ultimate goal is just to protect the family.
Aww.
So yeah, it kind of mixes some up stuff like that. And then the ending of the book is quite a bit different in terms of what happens directly after, because they kind of go into a police investigation, which they don't in the movie. Yeah, Yeah, it was a really fun book.
You liked it?
Oh, I liked it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Once it gets going, it was so weird at the start to have to kind of get yourself in the mindset of a dog.
That's why I was like,
really want to read that. It sounds super cool.
It's such an interesting way to go about writing a book, especially a werewolf book. I think that's what it kind of sounds like, because like with Bad Moon, I know you and I have been singing that movie's praises ever since this podcast started, but like much like Hellraiser, it has such awesome practical effects, and like that's what's so cool about it. But you don't think, when you watch Bad Moon, you don't think about it as you're watching a movie from the perspective of a dog. It gives you enough reason to go back and read the book. Which
they switch it quite a bit. Yeah, the dog is an integral part of the movie, but there's nothing from its point of view, whereas this whole book is just totally in his point of view, and then sometimes the dad's. But yeah, the dad plays such a main character in this, and is basically just becomes the mom in the movie, takes over all of his roles. Like even some of the dialogue just gets switched over to being her roles.
So he writes like what the dog is thinking.
Yeah.
So is there any time where it just goes squirrel?
No, there's
hold on 1 minute, let me just lick my ass.
I mean, it's weird for a book that's like under 300 pages. It goes so into detail where you kind of follow along, because the first couple times he sets it up is like, this is what dogs do, yada yada yada, and then he explains why the dog does this or thinks this. So by the end of the book, you're in such a mindset of being the dog that you're okay with it. It's really interesting.
The back of the book says a dog lover's page turner, definitely recommended.
To see the cover. The cover's cool.
Yeah,
but to see like the back of the book when you first brought it over today, I was like, like that's probably not something I would ever pick up for myself. But hearing you talk about it, I'm like, oh, actually, I think I'd like that a lot.
And like it's obviously not a hard book to read. It's kind of, I would say it's almost like a young adult book. There's nothing too like over. It doesn't have that Stephen King thing where they randomly talk about sodomy or something. It's very straightforward.
I need to ask the real question. The question that we're all wondering:
is the dog snipped?
No.
What the fuck?
Is Thor a good boy?
Is he the goodest boy?
I'm glad that you asked that, because that's such a huge part of this book.
Is he a good boy?
The duality of good boy, bad boy is such a big part of this. So for a large part of this book, he is a bad or a good boy being told that he's bad, but at the end he's a good boy.
Aww.
He's the goodest boy ever.
And they even at the end they go into how he's getting fed extra treats because he's such a good boy. So if you love dogs and you like violence and werewolves, this is perfect.
I need this book in my life.
You can borrow it if you want.
Oh my god, I want to read it.
I need to plug something that Buzi's been doing on social media that I love, and it's added.
Oh my god, it's my favorite.
Buzi follows SPC K9. It's the Saskatoon City Police K9 unit, and they always just post pictures of their dogs,
and they give like little descriptions of what the dog's doing.
I need to follow this right now.
Every single post, you just see Night of the Living Deadlift, good boy.
I've been doing this for over a year. You can just scroll through it and it's just good boy, good boy.
Facebook or Instagram?
Instagram.
Oh, it's Instagram.
You've been posting a lot of stuff, like it's like your phone is fucking up and it's posting it twice now.
Yeah, I don't know why.
But either way, it's just good boy, good boy.
Oh, that's freaking hilarious.
All right, well, I guess this round we all enjoyed our books.
Yeah.
So that was a successful book club.
I'm very interested for us to all read somebody who's a book that's recommended by someone else that isn't just out of our own podcast.
Can I just say something real quick?
Yes.
The SPS K9 unit are following 69 people.
Oh, interesting. Is Night
they
of
are
the
bad boys.
Bad boys.
Night of the Living Dead left one of them? Do they follow Buzi just
no,
to keep
they don't.
tabs on him?
I was really hoping.
Oh my god, these are so cute.
These puppies are amazing.
I was really hoping at some point they would send me a thing like a cease and desist, like please stop. Because it'll be like Unit 98 caught somebody who did like a break and enter and they tried to hide or something, and they'll give this little story and then it's just me saying good boy.
Oh my god, I love this.
Okay, all right, well, we're going to wrap up, everybody. So thank you for tuning in. If you stayed till the very end, we really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun. I know I can speak for myself, and I guess 3 out of 4 was that this has made us really want to well, you still read a book.
Yeah.
So like we've all like I got the reading
It has
bug
nothing
hard.
to do about me not having a reading bug or anything. I just can't find time a lot of the times for this.
Yeah. And
He's working on those giant quads.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You spend more time in the
My
gym
quad
than I do.
daddy.
But I've loved reading more, and I hope that this just improves and gets better and better every episode. So if you have any suggestions for us, please feel free to send it over to the Terror Table on Facebook.
Send us book
or
suggestions.
Instagram.
Totally.
Book suggestions next month. We're going to be talking about Lana's picks, and hopefully find a way to get Lana involved somehow or another, because for those of you who don't know, we are idiots and we don't know how to use Skype recording, so that's why we don't.
I can help you with that.
You have to know how to record it too. I'm sure it's easy, but we've just been so
We're
fucking
idiots.
lazy. Yeah.
It's all good.
Hope you guys enjoy it. We will see you next week on the Terror Table.